the East Coast at least. I want to thank you all for joining us virtually to hear and learn a little bit more about Wellesley College. My name is Lauren Kudish. I am one of the associate directors in the Office of Admission, and I will be partially presenting during this virtual information session, but I'm really fortunate to be joined by one of our current students. So Lisako, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining wherever you are. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Lisako. I'm currently a junior here at Wellesley. I use she, her pronouns. Home for me is New York City, and here at Wellesley, I study economics and Spanish.
Thanks, Lisako. So to give you all a little bit of a sense of what our virtual information session is going to look like, Lisako and I are going to tag team a little bit this evening. We will begin by talking about the community that we have here at Wellesley College, and then move on to talk about the academic experience and specifically the pathways that are available to our students and the foundation in the liberal arts. We'll, of course, highlight the many faculty members that play a significant role in our students' experience here, and then talk a little bit about the experiential learning that takes place outside of the traditional classroom setting. So things such as research, study abroad, and career education. And then, of course, student life. What are our students doing beyond the classroom to remain engaged with our community? And of course, the Women's College experience. Hopefully, time allowing, we'll have a chance to answer some questions that you all can ask of us. And I do have one of my wonderful colleagues behind the scenes helping out to answer some of those more specific questions that you may be submitting as well. I do want to just take a quick moment to acknowledge that we're connecting with you tonight as our country continues to deal with a perfect storm of issues, including systemic racism and a pandemic. We understand that these are challenging times for you, your families, and your communities. We hope the college search process may be a welcome break for many, an opportunity to connect with new communities, or a source of hope and excitement for the future. Wellesley's mission to provide an excellent liberal arts education to women who will make a difference in the world. It is clear that our world needs more female leaders and more women in general to take on broken policies and outdated mindsets so that we can truly change the world for the better. And Wellesley remains dedicated to empowering our students to use their voices, to supporting our faculty, staff, and alumni as they too make a difference in the world. So I'm excited to spend some time with you and Lisako this evening as we discuss Wellesley a little bit further. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that Wellesley is built on ancestral and traditional land of the Massachusetts people. We also recognize that the United States removal, termination, and assimilation policies and practices resulted in the forced settlement of Indigenous lands and the attempted erasure of Indigenous cultures and languages. We further acknowledge the oppression, injustices, and discrimination that Indigenous people have endured, and that there's much work to be done on the important journey to reconciliation. We commit to strengthen our understanding of the history and contemporary lives of Indigenous peoples and to steward this land. We further recognize the many Indigenous people living here today, including the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and Nipmuc nations, who have rich ancestral histories in Wellesley and its surrounding communities. Today, their descendants remind us that they are still here, where they maintain a vital and visible presence. We honor and respect the enduring relationship between these peoples and this land, as well as the strength of the Indigenous culture and knowledge, the continued existence of tribal sovereignty, and the principle of tribal self-determination. I do want to acknowledge, as I mentioned earlier, that we'll have a chance for you all to pose questions to us as we wrap up some of the more formal portions of this evening. So feel free to use the Q&A function to submit those questions. We encourage these questions to be more general, understanding that they can therefore apply to a number of different folks who might be able to watch this and learn from this experience. I do want to, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I do want to get us started by asking Lisako to talk a little bit about what drew you to Wellesley when you were going through the college search process.
Yeah, of course. So honestly, looking back, I think my college application process as a high school senior was a little too chaotic. I applied to what was probably way too many colleges. I really did an application dump at a variety of schools. So both at co-ed institutions, women's colleges, schools in the city I grew up in, my state schools, public and private universities really scattered across the country, because at the time when I was a high school senior, I knew that, or I didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do in college. So I think that definitely narrowed my choice down to liberal arts colleges. And more specifically for Wellesley, there are a few things that drew me in, but one of them was really the location. I grew up in a big city, but I really like the suburban location that Wellesley has. So having that nice separation between, I guess, the rich city life that Boston, which we're close to, has to offer, but at the same time, knowing that at the end of a very long day, for instance, if I do go out into Boston, that I'll come back to this very safe on-campus defined community, which is also, I hope everyone one day gets to visit our campus in person, but it's absolutely beautiful. Right now, there's the foliage coming out, and you really get to see all 4 seasons here. So that's just one factor that drew me in.
Wonderful. And Lusaka has talked a lot about a couple of different areas that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into. And Wellesley College is a small liberal arts college dedicated to the education of women who will make a difference in the world. And that mission really drives your student experience at Wellesley. We are a small liberal arts college located about 30 to 40 minutes west of Boston in just Wellesley, Massachusetts, as Lusaka mentioned. And our just under 2,400 students hail from all 50 states and over 80 countries across the globe. Approximately 14% of our first year class is made up of international citizens. And so with this geographic diversity, we have cultural, religious, socioeconomic, racial, political, and academic diversity on our campus. 50% of our students identify as students of color, with 25% of students identifying as underrepresented minorities. Our small size really does offer an intimate, hands-on, and collaborative learning environment where students are learning not only from their instructors, but also from their peers who offer different backgrounds, perspectives, and foundations of thought. And in those small classroom sizes, you're really engaging in these tight-knit discussion settings where you're able to learn, again, from those peers coming from all over the globe. Wellesley is an institution founded on the liberal arts, and that fact remains a significant part of our students' experiences. The liberal arts in particular assist our students as they navigate their potential academic pathway. Skills such as critical thinking, analytical thinking, judgment making, and peer collaboration are all really fostered through the liberal arts approach. Having these skills ultimately prepares our students for a variety of careers, and almost more importantly, the ability to pivot careers and industries. Upon applying to Wellesley, you can select to apply with an intended major or undecided. Wellesley offers 54 majors and more, and in the class of 2019, 31% of our students graduated with a double major. Beyond your major, you will always have the option to minor as well, and really take courses from across different disciplines. Students are expected to complete 9 distribution requirements, many of which will naturally overlap with certain major or minor requirements. And this again will provide students with the flexibility of fulfilling requirements, but also still taking courses that they're genuinely interested in. So Lisako, could you talk a little bit about your academic pathway when you were applying to Wellesley? What area of study were you considering, and how has that kind of panned out in your 3 years here?
Yeah, I always like to use myself as an example of how, I guess, honestly incredible liberal arts college education is. But I'd actually applied to Wellesley as a prospective sociology and education studies major. And I considered at one point to go down the teaching path, but here I am today studying econ and Spanish. So what really drove me to study, especially a field like econ, was at the end of my first semester, my first year, one of my friends ran up to me and she was like, Lisako, oh my goodness, you have to try taking an intro to econ class here. I really think you would like it. And I'd actually taken econ in high school, but kind of had an average experience with it. Didn't exactly fall in love with the class, but it was okay. But she convinced me enough to take it the next semester. And this was actually spring of 2020 when I first took my intro to microeconomics course. And honestly, even though we shifted to complete remote Zoom learning, seeing how much I still retained from that class, how accommodating my professor was, and how well I think my professor really adjusted to remote learning was one thing that pivoted me towards studying econ. And I really think, I always like to say that I would not have majored in a field like economics if I attended a coeducational institution.
Wonderful. I think one of the factors of thinking about a small liberal arts college is the opportunity to engage more closely with our faculty. Our average class size here at Wellesley is roughly 17 students in a class. Introductory classes tend to be more of a hybrid of a lecture and discussion, whereas when you get into some of those more advanced classes, particular to your major, they tend to be smaller, more seminar style, and more than 93% of our classes are less than 30 students. We have an 8-to-1 student to faculty ratio, and 62% of faculty are women. And during a student's experience, faculty become more than just instructors, but really advisors, mentors, and ultimately colleagues in many ways. Lasako, could you highlight a faculty member that's really left an impression on you during your experience thus far at Wellesley?
Yeah, one of my best professor interactions was actually with my first year writing course professor. So here at Wellesley, we have buckets of subjects that we need to take before we graduate called distribution requirements. And one of the requirements is a first year writing course that every first year student here has to take. And my course was called Hoaxes and Conspiracies, taught by Professor Callender in the sociology department. And kind of as the name suggests, we talked about very crazy, outlandish conspiracy theories. But at the end of that class and the next semester, so my fall of sophomore year, the professor had actually suggested that we do a little mini class reunion outside of our campus center. And he said that we should all grab lunch from the dining hall, sit outside, have a little picnic. And on the day that we were supposed to meet, he was a little late. So we were all wondering, oh, where did Professor Callender go? And then we got an email from him saying, oh, so sorry, guys. Like, I'm actually on my way to the campus center right now. I actually had my office hours on Lake Waban. I was talking to a student about sociology coursework over a canoe. Like, we were both in different canoes and talking about the coursework on the lake. So I just thought that was a really funny example of one creative way that our professors really go out of their way to talk with their students, even beyond the classroom.
Absolutely. And I know for so many students, it is those more informal, casual interactions that really leave this impression of, wow, our faculty are not only here to educate us, but really to be a support system and a community and our family while we're away from our family physically. So I love to hear about these remarkable faculty members and the relationships you all have fostered with them. Oftentimes, some of the most memorable experiences that our students have with faculty is actually pursuing research alongside our faculty. And by the nature of being an undergraduate college and not having graduate students on our campus, we have even more of a robust opportunity to experience research alongside faculty. Oftentimes, students hear small liberal arts college and think that that might mean that opportunities for research may be limited, but we would argue really that is in fact the opposite for students at Wellesley. Approximately 450 students do guided research in independent study or thesis annually at Wellesley. And this can be completed in a myriad of ways. It might include engaging and getting to know a faculty member, or perhaps completing funded research. And research isn't just limited to students studying in STEM disciplines, so science, math, but rather we really see students in all disciplines taking part in research. This may happen organically through the classroom environment, or perhaps more formally by working alongside faculty. Each semester, Wellesley hosts a conference to showcase the many research projects that our students have taken on. And these are our Tanner and Rollman conferences. And respectively, they happen in the fall and spring. So they're a great way to really showcase that research, and also for some of our undergraduate students and underclassmen students to really get a feel for what could await them in their upperclassmen years as well. We also have an extremely robust study abroad program. Wellesley offers 180 approved study abroad programs. These all vary in style and approach. For some, these may involve taking courses at an international university that we have an established relationship with. It may involve taking courses alongside other US students studying abroad through an international study foundation. Some of these may be arranged where you stay with a homestay family, and others may have students staying at apartments or dormitories. And really the wonderful thing about having so many options is that you really have the option to select a program based on the style or arrangement that you are seeking. Roughly half of our juniors study abroad each year. Obviously, this statistic has been altered in the past 2 years due to COVID. We've been fortunate to be able to still send students abroad during the COVID pandemic thus far. And Lusako, I know that you have just received word that you will be studying abroad. So do you want to talk a little about the study abroad program that you're going on and what that process was like to apply and what you can expect from your program?
So as part of my Spanish major, actually, I'm scheduled to, fingers crossed, that I'll go to a city in the south of Spain called Cordoba for my next spring semester. And the plan is that I'll stay with a host family, take local university classes there, and completely immerse myself in the Spanish language and culture. And for me, the process was actually pretty streamlined and really simple because the study abroad program is a Wellesley sponsored one. So for me, it just meant that I sat down with the Office of International Study, which is, by the way, our study abroad office, very supportive and lots of robust programs, but sitting down with them and figuring out all the appropriate documentation and paperwork I needed to submit. And really, even if you don't have an idea of whether you want to study abroad or not, you can just go into the office, sit down with them and chat, whether identify like the best program for you, if you want to study abroad, figuring out how to translate, I guess, the courses that you take abroad back to your major and making sure you get credit for them, figuring out additional scholarships if you do need them. But I will say, though, for Wellesley study abroad programs, especially if you do receive financial aid here at Wellesley, it transfers over to your study abroad as well, which definitely made the process a lot easier and definitely relieved a big financial burden for me as well.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to hear how that goes. And while we'll miss you in our office during that semester, I'm eager to hear about the experiences that you have while there. One of the last kind of pillars of experiential learning that we emphasize really early on in your time at Wellesley is the concept of career education. And we really purposely use that wording, career education, because we don't look at this as just internship placement and just professional development, but really from the second you step foot on campus, how can we foster that mindset and growth to work towards your potential career beyond Wellesley? So as early as your first year, you actually will be matched up with a career college mentor and a set of advisors. And these individuals on campus will help you navigate some of the bigger picture questions like, what am I passionate about? What type of environment do I thrive most in? What am I good at? What are my areas of improvement? All of those things, that self-reflection that's required to really better understand where you see yourself after your time at Wellesley. And then, of course, as you become an upperclassman, they'll work with you on things like resume building and mock interviews and ultimately internship placement. And really, this is going to help you navigate the very daunting task of discovering what you want to do beyond Wellesley. And internships are an extremely popular way to not only discover what it is you want to do beyond graduation, but also what you don't want to do beyond graduation. And I like to say that both of those experiences are equally valuable. Approximately 90% of the class of 2019 reported completing at least one internship before graduating. Over $620,000 has been awarded through Wellesley funded internships. So we also ensure that our students aren't having to take on any type of financial burden by taking these internship opportunities. We want to foster that professional development and growth while also ensuring that you're living comfortably for your semester or year, however long you're doing that internship. Our alumni network plays a significant role in internship and career education. Our alumni network has been named the most powerful women's network in the world. Our alums truly go above and beyond to assist our students as they navigate their time at Wellesley and also beyond graduation. So Lusako, could you talk a little bit about how you have utilized Career Education Office since being at Wellesley and perhaps the Alumni Network?
So for career education, my very first experience with them was to actually meet with them and have my resume edited. So of course they do everything from interview prep to your standard resume cleaning and edits, but also because I came into college again, having not really much of an idea of what I wanted to do, I just went into the office one day, my first semester. I had a little freak out. Oh my gosh, am I supposed to really figure out what I want to do in college? So I went with them, spoke with an advisor there, and we just basically talked about potential different ideas as to how to go about throughout my 4 years at Wellesley here in terms of figuring out if I wanted to pursue a career in the standard, like after I graduate college, I find a job, or if I wanted to continue, for instance, research or enter the field of academia or something else in between. And again, I want to emphasize that it's totally okay to have no idea what you want to do. And really, it's not something that you need to figure out at the end of your first year or really until the end of college. But I love that career education has always been a support network for me, in that I can always go into their office, drop by and chat. And also, of course, if I do have potential research internships or opportunities that I found, that they'll always provide the resources. And I remember at the end of my first year, so after COVID, I kind of switched around my initial summer plans. I was actually able to take on a month-long Hive internship. So the Hive, I always like to say, is this online platform that's LinkedIn for basically Wellesley students and the Wellesley community, so including faculty, staff, current students, and our alumni. And on the Hive, there were some alums who had posted various internship opportunities for current Wellesley students to tackle on. And by pure coincidence, the Hive internship that I took on was led by an alum who is, I think, like the head of the New York City Wellesley Club. So it was a great opportunity. And for me, that internship was shadowing her work at a financial services not-for-profit. So it was really cool learning about an industry that I wasn't very familiar with at the time. And to, again, just bond and connect with an alum and kind of talk about how various traditions at Wellesley haven't really changed over the years, but at the same time, seeing how she took her Wellesley education and the experiences she gained from her time at Wellesley beyond Wellesley after she graduated. Yeah.
Wonderful. Obviously, our students are incredibly busy beyond the classroom and beyond these professional development opportunities and experiential learning opportunities. We have an extremely robust student life experience here on campus. With over 180 student-run organizations, there are ample opportunities for Wellesley students to find their community beyond the classroom. And these range from clubs towards the arts, athletics, service, and more. Beyond these organizations, our campus continues to bring influential speakers, artists, and more to campus for our students to engage with as well. Lisako, you really are the expert in the room when it comes to student life. So why don't you highlight some of the various things that you are involved with on campus here?
Yeah, in terms of specific extracurriculars and clubs, I am on Japan Club, which is one of our many cultural organizations here on campus. Of course, I work at the Office of Mission, and I'm also the student assistant at the Knapp Social Science Center, which is a social science research center here on campus. And I also volunteer through the PBHA Chinatown Citizenship Program, which is a joint volunteer program between Wellesley and some other greater Boston area, Boston schools. And once a week over Zoom currently because of COVID, I tutor English or help an elderly community or the elderly community from the greater Chinatown area to prep for the US citizenship exam.
Wonderful. And one of the aspects of student life is our residential experience. Our residential campus really plays a role in students creating community for themselves, meeting students from all over the globe, students beyond just their major. We have some spectacular rivalries on campus around the different areas that you may reside. So Lisako, could you give us a little bit of an overview of the residential experience and maybe where has been your favorite place you've lived on campus?
Yeah, the great thing about Wellesley is, again, because we are a 98% residential campus, that means that almost all of our students live here on campus. And that definitely ties into how strong our community here is. And residential life for sure plays a big factor into that. And for me, I'm totally not biased, but I've lived in a very certain neighborhood on campus. So I live on West Side. So we have West Side and East Side. So East Side consists of our new dorms or newer buildings that were constructed, and it's closer to a science center. So it tends to be more popular for STEM majors, versus West Side is closer to, for instance, our campus center and the sports athletic fields, et cetera. But I've lived in West Side throughout my 3 years here at Wellesley. So totally not biased as to why I prefer one part of campus over the other. But the great thing is also we have our dining halls are mostly attached to a lot of our res halls. So definitely a perk that you can kind of grab breakfast in your pajamas when you're a little too lazy in the winter time. And yeah, lots of events going on throughout res life throughout the school year. We have our RAs always hosting weekly events, kind of cookies and tea, game nights, movie screenings. So different ways to make sure that everyone is engaged. And again, we also don't have like designated first year housing. So our housing is really integrated across students of all different majors and backgrounds and class years. Yeah.
And we also have the accessibility of the city of Boston, of course. We have a number of different ways to get into the city of Boston for students who are looking to do so, whether it be for academic purposes or internships or research, or just for fun. Of course, that is one of the benefits of being in kind of the best of both worlds. You have this tight-knit, small community campus feel while also accessing a major urban environment. And so our students can hop into the city using the T, which is our subway here in Boston. It actually runs above ground throughout the town of Wellesley. It's roughly a 10 to 15 minute walk from campus to the local T stop, and you can take that right into the city. We also have a free shuttle that students can opt to take. It runs, I believe, on the hour roughly throughout the weekday, and then I think it's every couple of hours on the weekend. It is free for students during the week, and on the weekends, I believe it's $3 round trip, so cheaper than the T realistically. And so that's another great way to utilize your environment and your surrounding community. The town of Wellesley is a suburban area. You can walk right into our downtown area, grab coffee at the local cafe, or pick up something at the pharmacy in town. There are some great restaurants that are walkable from campus as well. So again, our students certainly really engage on campus and student life, but they also find those times to get off campus, meet folks from other colleges and universities. There are over 60 colleges and universities in the greater Boston area, which is roughly a 10-mile radius. College-age students actually make up the largest portion of residents in the greater Boston area from the months of September to May. And the average age of a resident of the greater Boston area actually changes during the summer months due to that. So it's certainly not only a hub here on campus to meet college-age students, but of course you can access college-age students at a number of neighboring colleges and universities. We do have 4 historic partnerships with Babson, Olin, Brandeis, and MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Our students can cross-register at those respective institutions, and similarly, those students at those institutions can cross-register and take courses here at Wellesley. We also have a number of student orgs that are actually done through cross-registration across these campuses. So for example, one of our orchestras here on campus is actually the Brandeis Wellesley Orchestra. So that's another great way to meet students from not just your Wellesley community, but the greater Boston area as well. Now, this is obviously a part of the information session where I want to talk about the women's college experience. And if we were in person, I would poll the room and ask, get a feel for how many students attending are only looking at other women's colleges versus students who might be looking at co-ed institutions. And typically, the answer would be that the good majority of attendees are looking at a smattering of both women's colleges and co-ed institutions. We emphasize the women's college experience because the way that women interact, discuss, and learn from one another is different than in a co-ed setting. There is a respect and engagement and empowerment, a collaborative and supportive community feel that really is unique to the women's college experience. I like to steal our Dean of Admission and Financial Aid's anecdote or metaphor that the women's college experience and the Wellesley College experience specifically somewhat mirrors the idea of a penalty kick. So bear with me for a moment. But a penalty kick really trains your body to practice a singular motion so that in the game environment, you're never second guessing the motion that you take to make that kick. The women's college experience, and specifically the Wellesley experience, mirrors that in that you are in your classroom setting where your classmates and your peers are supporting you to ask the question and to take the risk. And so when you leave Wellesley and you go on to graduate school or you go on to whatever profession you end up pursuing, you never second guess that desire to raise your hand and ask a question, to take a risk and apply for that promotion, to take on a project that might be outside of your comfort zone. Those tendencies all really come naturally to you because you've been trained to understand your role and your confidence to be at that table. Lisako, can you talk a little bit about really the women's college experience? How has this impacted your time at Wellesley? And what were you expecting from a women's college experience, and has your experience thus far met that expectation?
So for me, I ultimately committed to Wellesley because of a gut feeling. And for me, that gut feeling wasn't exactly because Wellesley was a women's college. It was, oh, okay, I really like this school. Oh, but it also happens to be a women's college. And I think for me, I really came to appreciate the women's college aspect again at the end of my first year following COVID, and seeing how not just how the school and the administration handled the entire situation, but how supportive and connected I still was with my friends, even in the pandemic when we were all in quarantine, was something that reaffirmed me, wow, I think I'm in the right place. And again, because I am studying economics, it's truly been inspiring to be in a classroom setting where A, there's no mansplaining, but B, in a very collaborative learning environment where, again, I've never felt as if my voices and my contributions and my participation in the class doesn't matter. And I speak as someone in high school who was very introverted, always sat in the back of the classroom, may have done well enough in school, but was never that active participant. And I was definitely much more passive in terms of being that kind of student. But here at Wellesley, I've really been able to tackle on a myriad of experiences, trying new activities, extracurriculars, figuring out that, some of those opportunities may not have been for me. But even though they may not have been for me, at the same time, I've been able to keep trying and trying until I figure out my niche and what's best fit for me. And really along the way, I've been a lot more secure in myself, my identity, and really figuring out my interests along the way. So for me, attending a women's college has been formative, not just to my identity, but also to really being secure with who I am.
I love speaking with Lisako because she speaks about the fact that she was an introvert, and I laugh because as long as I've known Lisako, she has been just the epitome of a confident, powerful student. So I love to hear that Wellesley has played a pivotal part in that transformation for you. It is important to note that we are a women's college, but we do have students who reside on our college who no longer identify as female, and we have non-binary students and students who have transitioned since being here as well. So it is a really gender diverse place, even as a women's college. Women's college alumni across all women's colleges are actually more likely to earn a graduate degree, so roughly 51%, than women from co-ed liberal arts colleges, roughly 33%, or flagship public universities, roughly 27%. Additionally, alumni from women's colleges represent 33% of the women board members of Fortune 500 companies and more than 20% of women in Congress. So we really see that this level of empowerment, confidence, and support from your peers is something that continues with you beyond your time at Wellesley alone. So I want to take a moment and share some information about our admission and application process. I personally like to break our application process down into 5 components. The first 2 being your grades and curriculum. So we do read holistically here at Wellesley. So folks in our Office of Admission read on teams. We take a look at what your school environment has been like, the types of curriculum available to you at your high schooling experience, and how you've taken advantage of that curriculum. We then take a look, obviously, at your grades as well. So how successful have you been in the classroom setting and given that rigorous curriculum that you've partaken? We then take a look at standardized tests for those who choose to submit it. We are test optional for students applying for the fall of 2022. You can choose to submit either the ACT or the SAT. It is completely up to you which test to send in if you choose to send a test at all. With test optional, we like to emphasize that it is optional. It will never disadvantage you in the process of applying should you choose not to submit your scores. Should you choose to submit your scores, it's simply one more facet of the application that we have to learn a little bit more about you, okay? The 4th component are what I like to refer to as personal highlights. These include your extracurricular involvement and activities, as well as recommendations from your teachers and counselor. I always like to emphasize that each aspect of the application should be used to tell me something new about yourself. So as you're thinking about the teachers that you opt to select to send recommendations on your behalf, really ensure that that individual has gotten to know you personally as best as possible. We can get a feel for how you've engaged in the classroom setting and the academic setting from your transcript. Seeing those really strong grades gives us a sense that you've performed well in your classroom setting, you've engaged in discussion, you've supported your peers, but really understanding what type of community member you're going to be is a big part of getting to know you through those teacher recommendations. As for the extracurricular activities, there is no one type of involvement that we're seeking. Our students are incredibly diverse in their interests. As I mentioned earlier, community service, the arts, athletics, cultural orgs, all of these have a role on our campus. And so we're seeking to look and really learn about what you're passionate about. What are you invested in? So adding 15 different clubs and orgs in your senior year isn't something that we're looking for. We're really looking to see, where are you a leader and how do you display that leadership? And then lastly, but certainly not least, are the essays. This includes the personal statement that you complete through either the Coalition Common Application or QuestBridge application. And then also the Wellesley Wellesley Supplemental essay as well. The Wellesley Supplemental essay is a short answer essay that we ask you to reflect on the Wellesley 100, which is one of our publications that can be accessed online and also in print. And we ask that you reflect on 2 of the 100 marvelous things about Wellesley College. We're really looking to better understand how you relate and engage with the Wellesley campus community. So we're not seeking to have you select 2 specific ones that we think are the right answer, but rather, what is going to be your mark on our campus? What really resonates with you in this process? How can you find yourself amid the Wellesley community through this Wellesley 100? Being as specific as possible is really helpful for us to say, wow, this student really knows Wellesley. They've really gotten a feel for the type of community that we have, the type of academic experience that is, ahead of you here. And so really being as specific as possible is beneficial in this process. As for the personal statement, both quality of writing as well as content play a role in us understanding you. I always like to emphasize that we don't offer interviews as a part of the admission process. So your personal statement is your interview. It is the one area of the application that you are advocating on your own behalf. Every other facet of the application is someone either speaking for you or is your transcript or standardized testing, perhaps. So this is really your one chance to leave your mark. If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't be funny. That's not the time. Proofread, and proofread once again. I am old school. I strongly recommend printing out that essay, pen to paper. There's a lot that spell check doesn't actually check and catch. So be mindful that whatever work you're putting forward really represents your best work, right? Because this is an indication of the type of work that we can expect from you at the college level. So those are really the 5 components to the application. Fun fact, there is no fee to apply to Wellesley. We do not have an application fee. So we encourage you to take that chance and submit that application and learn a little bit more about yourself and us in the process. As for financial aid, which is a significant part of the application process as well, Wellesley offers need-based financial aid. We do not offer any merit-based scholarship. To apply for need-based aid, we ask that you submit both the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and the CSS profile, which can be found on the College Board website. Both of those documents will be required for your financial aid application. Wellesley meets 100% of demonstrated need. We are need blind for domestic applicants, so that includes US citizens and permanent residents. We are need aware for international applicants, so students who do not have that citizenship or permanent residency. So we have an incredibly robust financial aid offering, $74 million given in financial aid dollars. And the average grant award for those receiving aid was roughly $52,000 this past year. So, and that does not include any outside scholarship as well. So I will take this time to hopefully address some of the questions that we have, and we're going to go ahead and stop that recording.